The cooperative society secretary was a lawyer. All lawyers were troublemakers. Moreover, why should he cheapen himself before this man?
He said, impossible. I have a busy day tomorrow. I can probably drop in just for a few minutes if you like, that is if you are going to tell me definitely yes or no.
He added, I came to you because yours is the biggest establishment. I knew you could do it, although a dozen other printers were ready to take on the job. Ours is the best and biggest press, Lai said haughtily.
You will not be able to get this service anywhere else, so much I can assure you. What will be your charge? I can tell you all that only after we decide to take on the work.
Will you require a long time to print the book? Margaya persisted. I will tell you tomorrow, Lai said.
Margaya said, you are a very cautious man. You don't like to commit yourself to anything. That's right, the other said appreciatively, sensing a kindred soul.
For among businessmen as among statesmen, the greatest dread was to be committed to anything. Being non-committal was the most widely recognized virtue among businessmen, and it came to Margaya instinctively as his other qualities came to him. The musician hums the right note at birth, the writer goes to the precise phrase in the face of an experience.
Whereas for the businessman the greatest gift is to be able to speak so many words which seem to signify something, but don't, which convey a general attitude but are free from commitment. Next day Margaya tidied himself up more than ever and was at the press at the appointed time. He still carried his manuscript securely wrapped in a paper sheet.
The moment he entered the press he had a feeling that all was going to go well. He went straight up to Lai and asked, well, what does your lawyer say? We can take it if you agree to a couple of small conditions.
You can speak your mind freely, Margaya said, encouragingly. In business we either conclude a deal or we don't, but there is no room for mincing words. If you don't want it here, I can take it somewhere else, he added.
No, don't say such a thing, mister, the other said. I don't like negative statements to be made in this press. I don't like negative statements myself unless I am forced to make them, said Margaya, discovering instinctively yet another principle of business life, to have the last word.
He concluded that he who spoke last gained most. He was burning with anxiety to know if the other would print the book, for he seemed to be a man who knew his job. Margaya looked about and asked in a business-like manner, what are the two conditions you mentioned just now?
I will take up the printing provided it's done on a basis of partnership. What's the partnership for? Well, that will make our work more interesting.
Let us publish it together, and share whatever we get. I mean 50-50 in everything, expenses as well as returns. Do you agree?
Margaya took a little time before answering. I won't say yes or no before thinking over it deeply. What's your second condition? You must indemnify me against any legal action that anyone may take at any time.
What do you mean? You must bear the legal responsibility for bringing out this book. I see, said Margaya with deep suspicion.
Why? It's because you are bringing it out. If I am bringing it out, you have nothing to do with it except to print it, isn't that so?
Then why do you ask for profits? How are you concerned with profits? For a moment the other looked a little confused, but soon recovered enough composure to say, I mean to propose a non-liability partnership.
Margaya was taken in by the high-sounding phrase. What did it mean? It meant evidently sharing his profits, not his troubles.
He said, I've done a variety of business. I'm experienced in different kinds of partnership. What business were you doing before? Asked Lai.
Chiefly banking, Margaya said. You know, when a man is a banker he is at once involved in a number of other things too, picturing himself writing a letter here for a villager and arranging a joint loan for another there. Lai seemed to appreciate this.
He said, we have a bank in Gujarat, but you know it also deals in oil seeds in certain seasons. It's inevitable, Margaya said, with an air of profundity. It's impossible not to be interested in more than one business, added Lai.
They went on talking far into the day. Once again lunchtime came. Once again they got their tiffin from a hotel and Margaya stuffed himself with sweets and coffee and began to feel quite at home in the press.
They kept talking non-committally, warmly, discreetly and with many digressions, till late in the evening, but without concluding anything. Their talk and counter-talk never ceased, and the manuscript lay between. At about 6 they dramatically stretched their arms over it, shook hands and concluded the pact, whereby Margaya had the satisfaction of seeing himself a 50-50 partner without any investment on his part.
He covered the satisfaction he had in the deal with, "I'm not keen on this, but you seem to have become such a friend to me that I find it difficult to refuse." He pulled a long face and signed a partnership deed with the utmost resignation. He kept saying, "You have won me over.
You are a sharp businessman," a compliment which Lai accepted with the utmost cheerfulness. "We can never be businessmen unless we give and take on a 50-50 basis," Lai kept saying, a proposition heartily endorsed by Margaya, although its arithmetic was somewhat complex and beyond the understanding of ordinary men. Margaya knocked on his door with great authority.
Lai had offered to drive him home in his car. But Margaya declined it definitely. He didn't want him to see his house or street.
He explained that after all the hours of sitting in a stuffy atmosphere he would prefer a walk, so as to be fit for work next day. He knocked on his door with such authority that his wife came up hurriedly and opened it. She stood aside to let him pass in.
She could not pluck up enough courage to put to him the usual irritating questions. She served him his food and then said in a forced light manner, "This has almost become your usual hour?" "Yes, it may have to be even later hereafter."
"I shall have to be very busy." "Oh," she said.
"Is that book printed?" "It's not so easy," he replied. "There are many complications."
And as she did not annoy him with further questions, he added, "I have almost signed a partnership agreement with a big man." He liked the sentence and the feeling of importance that it gave him. But he didn't like the word, big, that he had used.
Reflecting, he felt he might take the word out and knock it flat lest his wife should think he really meant anyone was bigger than he. He rectified his mistake by adding, "Big businessman." Big.
A North Indian. He thinks he is very clever, but I was able to tweak his nose. "Oh," said his wife gratified. He seemed to acquire a new stature and importance.
He finished his dinner and when he got up she was ready with a bowl of water for his hands. And then she held a towel up to him. He was pleased with all these ministrations, thinking, "Yes, she is not a bad sort, except when she gets into a bad mood."
He said aloud, "We can live differently hereafter, I think. A lot of money is coming in." The next day he had a very busy time discussing several technical matters, of which he was totally ignorant, with Lai.
Lai seemed to assume that Margaya knew what he was talking about. Margaya, true to his principles, did not wish to show his ignorance. Lai asked, "Shall we print in demi or octavo?"
What was demi and what octavo? What strange terms were these? To what universe did they belong? Margaya frankly blinked, wondering, what was this man talking about?
He said grandly, "Each has its own advantage, it's for you to decide, you are a technical man." Lai said, "You see, demi will give us greater area." Margaya was hearing the word for the first time in his life.
He could not understand to which part of a book or press or sales the word referred. He kept himself alert, deciding not to lose any hint that might fall in the course of the other's talk. He added, "If it means extra area, what other consideration can you have?"
"It's not only that, octavo is more handy, and will look less like a gazetteer." At the mention of gazetteer, Margaya made a wry face. "Oh, no, we cannot afford to make it look like a gazetteer. In that case we will print it on octavo."
"All right," he said, permitting it graciously. "But as a matter of formality I shall be glad to know the difference in cost." "Not much, about an anna per pound," Lai said.
Pound? Where did pound come in? He was about to blurt out the question, a survival of his boyhood days in the classroom where, whenever the word pound was mentioned, the immediate question was, "LB pound or shilling pence pound?"
He almost opened his mouth to ask it, but pressed it back in time, remembering that it was a silly betraying question even in those days. The teacher caned all the boys who asked him that question, for it showed that they had not paid any attention to the sum they were doing. Margaya feared if he raised it the other might tear up their agreement or decide to swindle him with absolute impunity. What did they weigh in the book trade?
He could understand nothing of it. He dropped it, hoping on some future occasion that he would know all about it. He had an unfailing hope that whatever there was to be known would be known by him one day.
"Only I must keep my eyes open, and in 6 months I shall be able to tell them what is wrong with them," he thought, with much self-esteem. Lai observed him for a moment and then said, "Why are you silent? You are not saying anything."
"It is because I have nothing to say," said Margaya. "So you accept my choice?" "Yes, of course," Margaya said, hoping this would once and for all save him from further embarrassment.
But Lai turned up with a new poser for him. "Shall we use ordinary 10-point Roman or another series which I use only for special works? It's also 10-point but on an 11-point body." "Body?
Points? 10 and 11? What was it all about?"
Margaya said, "Ah, that is interesting. I should like to see your 11-point body." He had grotesque visions of a torso being brought in by 4 men on a stretcher. When Lai reached out his arm and pulled out a book, he didn't think it had any relation to the question he had asked.
He thought Lai was trying to read something. But Lai opened a page, thrust it before him and said, "This is it. How do you like this type?"
Margaya gazed at it for fully 5 minutes and said, "It seems all right to me." "What do you say?" "It's one of our finest types," said Lai.
"Do you wish to see our ordinary Roman?" Now he roughly knew what this meant. "If this is your best, there's not much reason why anything else should be seen," he said with the air of a man who could employ those few minutes to better profit.
He added, "In order not to allow the other too easy a time, only tell me if you have any special reasons from the point of view of costs. A difference of a couple of rupees per form, that's all." "That's all, is it?"
Margaya said. "How many formies will there be?" Lai glanced through the script and said, "Even if it's going to be page for page, it won't be more than 10 formies."
"I don't think we ought to worry about a bare difference of 20 rupees, Margaya said, feeling happy that he could after all take part in the discussion. "I agree with you," said Lai. "Now about the style of binding, etc."
"Oh, these details!" Margaya exclaimed. "They should not come as far as me."
"You ought to decide those things yourself. But every item has to go into costs. I don't want you to feel at any time that I have incurred any expense without your knowledge."
"That comes only at the end, doesn't it?" Margaya said. "Of course, in the first quarter following publication."
And Margaya felt relieved. He had a gnawing fear lest he should have to shell out cash immediately. "And," said Lai, "my lawyer suggests that we had better call this book Domestic Harmony instead of Bed Life. Have you any objection?"
"Oh, none whatever," said Margaya. "In these matters we must implicitly obey the lawyers. Otherwise we shall get into trouble."
"Yes, otherwise we shall get into trouble," echoed Margaya, adding, "We must do everything possible to avoid getting into trouble because a businessman's time is so precious." "You are an uncanny fellow. You seem to understand everything," Lai said admiringly.
When Balu was 6 years old, Margaya had him admitted to the town elementary school. Margaya made a great performance of it. He took the young man in a decorated motor with pipes and drums through the market road. The traffic was held up for half an hour when Balu's procession passed.
Balu sat with the top of his head shaved, with diamonds sparkling on his earlobes, and a rose garland round his neck, in a taxi with 4 of his picked friends by his side. Margaya walked in front of the car, and he had invited a few citizens of the road to go up with him as well. Strangest sight of all, his brother was also with him in the procession.
They seemed to have made it up all of a sudden. On the eve of the schooling ceremony, Margaya stated, "After all, he is his own uncle, his own blood, my brother. Unless he blesses the child, of what worth are all the other blessings he may get?"
He grew sentimental at the thought of his elder brother. "Don't you know that he brought me up? But for his loving care."
He rambled on thus. His wife caught the same mood and echoed, "No one prevents them from being friendly with us.